What if I told you that discipline isn't about willpower, but identity? That the reason you feel scattered or unmotivated isn't because you're broken, but because you're living without a personal code. Discipline is often misunderstood. People think it's about setting strict routines, waking up early, or crossing items off a to-do list. But in truth, discipline is something far deeper. It's about who you are at your core. It's about building structure in a world designed to distract you at every turn. And when your mind feels cloudy, restless, or unfocused, it's not a flaw in your character. It's the natural consequence of living without order. In the absence of personal structure, the mind doesn't explode. It erodes, quietly, subtly, through wasted mornings, unfulfilled goals, and a nagging sense of regret. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They didn't rely on bursts of motivation. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They lived by a code, a law, that kept them grounded even when life felt unsteady and emotions ran high. They had one truth burned into their bones. Without inner discipline, you become a slave to outer chaos. But when you take back control, when you begin choosing structure over impulse, clarity over confusion, intention over habit, you unlock a dangerous kind of power. A focused mind isn't just productive. It's magnetic. It's unstoppable. This episode isn't just another collection of productivity hacks. It's a call to arms, a rewiring of how you think, act, and exist. It's about turning discipline into something sacred, not dry or mechanical, but purposeful and alive. Whether you're an artist trying to stay inspired, a student fighting distraction, a leader carrying weight no one sees, or just someone trying not to fall apart, these 12 Stoic laws will change the way you move through the world. They aren't rigid rules. They're powerful reminders. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to move, especially when it's hard, especially when it's quiet, especially when no one's watching. Because real discipline, it doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't demand applause. It shows up over and over until one day you realize you didn't just change your habits. You rebuilt yourself from the inside out. Law 1. Discipline is self-respect made visible. Ask yourself, how do you treat yourself when no one's watching? Not when you're on camera. Not when someone expects you to show up. Not when a deadline is looming. But in the silence. In those forgotten hours, when it's just you, your thoughts, and the weight of your future. That's where real discipline is born. Not in public checklists, but in private moments of truth. It's not about punishing yourself or stripping joy from your life. It's not about being cold or robotic. True discipline is a radical act of self-respect. It's choosing the hard thing now, not because you hate who you are, but because you finally respect who you're becoming. It's choosing what strengthens you over what soothes you. And it's doing it even when it's uncomfortable, not for applause, but because your future is worth it. In those quiet moments of choice, where comfort whispers and your future calls, that's where discipline is either built or broken. That's exactly what Epictetus meant when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Because if you don't take charge of your mind, your impulses, your fears, your procrastination, your distractions, then something else will. You'll end up being ruled by whatever screams the loudest in that moment. A craving, a mood, a trend, or even someone else's expectation. And slowly, almost without realizing it, you begin drifting away from your purpose. away from your values, until one day you barely recognize the person you've become. Most people associate discipline with harshness, as if it's about forcing yourself through life with gritted teeth and guilt. But real discipline doesn't feel like punishment. It's not a battle, it's a coming home. It's a quiet decision to stop abandoning yourself. It's that moment you stand tall, not in front of others, but within yourself, and say, "I won't betray me again." Take a simple, relatable example. It's 6 a.m. your alarm buzzes. You're tired. Every cell in your body wants to hit snooze. The bed feels safe, warm, easy. But you've made a promise, not to anyone else, but to yourself. So you sit up, you stretch, you move. Not because it feels amazing, not because you're fired up with motivation, but because in that small, silent moment, you're making a bold declaration. My goals are more important than my moods. That, right there, is discipline. And it's beautiful. Or imagine this. You've committed to taking care of your body. Now you're out at dinner. Everyone around you is indulging, laughing, nudging you to just live a little. You feel it. The urge to give in, to blend in, to let go. But instead of folding, you take a breath. You remember your why. You make a deliberate choice. And in that moment, it's not just about what you're eating. It's about something far deeper. You are reclaiming authorship over your life. Discipline also teaches others how to treat you. When you start honoring your own time, others begin to do the same. When you protect your energy and set clear boundaries, people feel it, and they respond. When you keep your promises to yourself, your posture changes, your tone changes. You carry yourself with a quiet confidence, not out of pride, but from living in alignment. You're not chasing perfection, you're choosing authenticity. And in a world full of noise, that kind of clarity is magnetic. But let's not sugarcoat it. Discipline isn't always graceful. It will call out your excuses. It will force you to face the lies you've told yourself. I'll do it tomorrow. I don't have enough time. This one time won't hurt. It will strip away your fantasies about who you could be and demand action in who you are becoming. That's why so many people run from it. It's easier to escape into the illusion of later than to sit with the discomfort of now. And that's where Stoicism enters, not as a rigid system of rules, but as a compass. A Stoic doesn't wait for the stars to align. They don't debate with their weaker urges. They act with intention, with clarity, not because it's easy or exciting, but because it's right. Because every time you choose discipline, you are casting a vote for the person you're becoming. So if you're struggling with discipline, stop searching for shortcuts. Start searching for honesty. Ask yourself, where have I been abandoning myself? Where have I been trading my future for momentary ease? So the real question is, what would your life look like if you stopped abandoning yourself and started showing up with the same devotion you give to others? Discipline isn't a switch you flip when you're feeling inspired. It's not a temporary phase or a curated highlight for social media. It's a way of life, a bold message to the world that says, I matter, my goals matter, I will not waste this life I've been given. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Start small. Just one promise kept, one decision made with full intention, one morning reclaimed from the grip of excuses. That's where your strength begins to resurface. That's where the rebuild starts. Because, let's be honest, the real flex isn't waking up at 5 a.m. It's keeping your word when no one's watching. It's building a self you can rely on again and again. And that kind of trust, that's freedom. A freedom no one can hand to you, and no one can take away. Law 2. Build discipline that matches your nature. Here's a truth most people overlook. Not all discipline is the same, and not all forms of discipline are meant for you. We live in a world filled with routines that go viral. Cold showers, 5 a.m. clubs, 20-step productivity checklists. For some, these rituals light a fire. For others, they feel like shackles. Why? Because discipline that isn't aligned with your nature will always feel like a prison. It might look impressive. It might earn claps online. But if it's not anchored in your temperament, your strengths, your personal rhythm, it won't last. Worse, it might even push you to resent the very idea of structure. The Stoics understood this. They weren't trying to churn out clones of the same disciplined man. They didn't believe in one-size-fits-all success. They believed in something much deeper, self-governance. Marcus Aurelius wasn't Seneca. Epictetus, born into slavery, didn't live the life of an emperor. And yet, they shared the same foundation. Each person must uncover their own internal law and live by it. Not by copying someone else's lifestyle, but by understanding themselves deeply enough to craft a structure that feels true. Let's break it down. Picture a soldier and a poet. The soldier thrives in order, in structure, routine, hierarchy. His code might include early mornings, physical training, a rigid schedule. The poet, she might need long, unbroken stretches of solitude, quiet rituals, inspiration, freedom to move with the chaos of creativity. Both of them need discipline, but the form it takes, completely different. Same principle, different application. Now, what about you? Have you paused to ask yourself, what kind of discipline actually fuels me? Not what looks good on paper, not what wins approval, but what makes you come alive. Some of us crave stillness in the morning. Others need movement. Some focus best in deep, quiet marathons. Others thrive in short, explosive bursts. There is no correct path. There is only the path you will actually walk. What matters is that you build a rhythm that you can respect, and then protect it like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. So if discipline should reflect who you are, not just who you admire, then here's the next question. What happens when you're living inside a system that simply doesn't fit? This is where brutal honesty becomes your best ally. If you're constantly failing to follow through, if you keep falling short of your routine, maybe the issue isn't your willpower. Maybe the problem isn't that you're weak or unmotivated. Maybe, just maybe, the system you're trying to follow was never made for you. You might be stuck inside someone else's version of discipline, thinking it's superior just because it worked for them. But true discipline isn't about superiority. It's about sustainability. It's about creating a structure that you actually want to return to, especially when life gets messy and motivation runs dry. One that reflects your current self, while also gently nudging you toward the person you're becoming. Let's take a real example. Imagine you keep trying to wake up at 5 a.m. every day because a book, a podcast, or a viral video told you. That's what successful people do. But each morning, you hit snooze again and again. You start thinking you're lazy, that you lack discipline. You feel defeated before the day even begins. But hold on. What if your body, your creativity, your natural energy all peak at 10 p.m.? What if you're simply wired differently? In that case, Real discipline wouldn't be forcing yourself into a 5 a.m. mold. It would mean honoring your natural rhythm and building your system around that truth, instead of against it. Now, let's be clear. This isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's not a free pass to drift aimlessly. It's about stopping the internal war and working with your nature, not against it. The Stoics had a name for this: living according to nature. And they didn't just mean nature out there. They meant your inner nature to dot when discipline aligns with who you are. It becomes something far more powerful. It's no longer about brute force. It becomes about form, about coherence, about inner harmony. Less pressure, more flow. And here's what happens when you find that rhythm. Discipline stops feeling like a battle. You stop depending on willpower to drag you through the day. Instead, you move with clarity, with momentum, not because someone's watching, but because your structure fits you. It feels like home. That's the real goal. Not perfection, not performance, but a personal system that protects your focus, supports your energy, and honors the design of your inner world. So today, pause and ask yourself honestly, am I building discipline that actually matches who I am? Or am I still borrowing blueprints from someone else, hoping they'll fix me? Then ask the deeper question: what would it look like to build my own code? One that respects both my strengths and my blind spots. Because true discipline doesn't mean squeezing into someone else's mold. It means becoming the architect of your own life, your own mind. Law 3. Without order, you pay in silence. As we continue from the last reflection on clarity and chaos, it becomes clear that discipline is not just about pushing forward. It's also about guarding your time and mental space. When you lose structure, you don't just lose productivity. You lose presence. You lose clarity. You lose connection to the person you were trying to become. So what happens when your system doesn't reflect your nature? The answer is subtle and often invisible. Because disorder doesn't crash in with chaos, it seeps in quietly. The cost of disorder isn't just lost productivity. It's deeper than that. It's the slow erosion of your presence, your clarity, your connection to the person you're trying to become. You might tell yourself it's harmless to figure things out as you go, to stay flexible, spontaneous, loose with your time. But here's the truth. When you don't give your time a direction, the world will gladly give it one for you. Distractions don't ask for permission. Notifications don't knock. And chaos, it always finds a crack, especially when you haven't built any walls to keep it out. And the worst part? You don't even notice it happening. Disorder doesn't arrive with sirens. It creeps in, slow, subtle, quiet. It begins when you skip your journal just once. When you start checking your phone the moment you wake up. When you stop planning your week because you'll figure it out. You eat what's easy. You say yes to what's convenient. You delay what's meaningful. And the world, it doesn't fall apart. Not right away. But you do, slowly, invisibly. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And here's the catch. A lot of that waste doesn't come from laziness. It comes from a lack of clarity. Because when you don't have a structure, you don't lead your life. You react to it. You become a passenger, tossed around by moods, urges, impulses, other people's plans. You're not free. You're just floating. And let's be clear, order isn't about rigidity. It's not about turning your life into a robot's checklist or choking the joy out of your day. It's about creating containers, mental and emotional boundaries that protect what matters most. A morning routine. That's a container. A writing schedule. a weekly reflection, a phone curfew. These aren't restrictions, they're acts of rescue. They're acts of rebellion against the chaos that the modern world tries to drown you in. Because when you reclaim your time, you reclaim your energy. And with that comes your ability to choose, to act with intention, not just instinct. And that is exactly what Stoicism invites us to do. Not to control the world, but to control our orientation to it. And that begins with inner order, a kind of mental architecture that doesn't sabotage your growth, but supports it. So pause and ask yourself, what have I been tolerating in my life that quietly drains me? Where have I let tiny pockets of disorder become heavy, daily burdens? Maybe it's the clutter on your desk. Maybe it's that mental tab left open, the hard conversation you've been avoiding, the project you keep putting off, the dream you keep redefining because it terrifies you. Whatever it is, name it. Then make a decision. Not a perfect one, just a clear one. Because the longer you live without structure, the more you suffer in silence. Not from dramatic breakdowns, but from the quiet erosion that no one sees. The kind that steals years from your life, one distracted hour at a time. So create order in your thoughts, your time, your physical space, not for applause, but to finally give your mind what it's been begging you for. Clarity, stability, peace, because at the end of the day, discipline isn't about harsh control. It's about freedom through thoughtful design, and order is the blueprint that puts that freedom into motion. Once you've created order, it becomes easier to grow. But here's the catch. Growth brings its own trap, comfort, and comfort, if left unchecked, can quietly dismantle everything you've built. Law 4. Success can make you soft. Stay sharp. After understanding how easily chaos can erode our days, we must confront the next hidden threat. Success. Success is seductive. It lulls you into believing the climb is over, that you've arrived, that the work is done. And that's exactly when the real danger begins, not in failure, but in comfort. Success has a strange way of sneaking up on you, not just as a reward, but as a distraction. It whispers that the hard part is over, that you've earned a break, that the climb is finished. But that illusion, that's where the real danger begins. Because it's rarely failure that makes us soft. It's comfort. Comfort lulls you into complacency. And complacency is the silent killer of momentum. One of the most dangerous lies your mind will ever tell you is this: you've earned a break. Not a break for rest, but a break from your discipline, your values, your code. And breaks like that, they don't refuel you, they erode you. The Stoics saw this clearly. They warned of it often. To them, external success was never the destination. Inner strength was the true prize. And inner strength, it needs constant sharpening. Take Marcus Aurelius, for example, an emperor with absolute power, and yet he wrote daily reminders to himself, warnings against laziness, pride, indulgence. Why? Because he knew that with every reward came a new risk, the risk of forgetting what built that success in the first place. Stop, think about your own life. You grind, you sacrifice, you stay disciplined, and then it happens. The breakthrough, a win, a promotion, a big result, and suddenly, your urgency fades. You sleep in a little longer. You skip your morning routine. You say yes to distractions. You start telling yourself, I deserve this. But here's the brutal truth. What got you here will not keep you here. If you stop doing the things that led to your success the moment they start paying off, You've already begun the decline. Now, to be clear, rest is essential. But there's a massive difference between strategic rest and emotional surrender. One recharges you, the other regresses you, and the line between the two. It's called awareness. A Stoic doesn't fear rest. They fear drifting without noticing. They fear becoming dull. A version of themselves that's coasting on yesterday's effort rather than today's intention. In your everyday life, this drift might look like getting complacent in your relationships, assuming they'll just maintain themselves, losing hunger for learning, believing you already know enough, letting your health go, convincing yourself you've earned the cheat days. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's a slow, quiet decay disguised as reward. So how do you stay sharp? By remembering this simple truth. Success is not a finish line. It's just a checkpoint. And once you arrive at it, the only real question is, what now? What part of me needs refining next? Where am I starting to settle? The Stoic doesn't treat discipline as a temporary phase. They treat it as a lifelong craft, something to tend to daily, with care and consistency. It's not about how far you've come. It's about whether you're still showing up with the same hunger, clarity, and humility that got you started. Because discipline after success changes. It's no longer driven by desperation. Now, it's fueled by devotion to your principles, to your practice, to your vision. You don't train because you're behind. You train because you're committed. Because you know, ease isn't the goal. Growth is. So if you're standing in a moment of success right now, don't relax your standards. Refine them. So when success finds you, don't let it make you soft. Let it remind you of what built your strength, and use that strength to rise again. Use the stability you've earned not as a permission slip to coast, but as a launch pad to rise even higher. And if you've drifted a bit, if you've fallen into comfort or distraction, there's no shame in that. Just notice it. Wake up, recommit, step back into your path. Not because you're failing, but because you're remembering who you are at your core. And if you ever forget again, come back here. Come back to this truth. Discipline built you, and only discipline will keep you grounded, focused, and growing. Law 5. Don't wait for motivation. Move without it. Ask yourself honestly, how many mornings, afternoons, or entire days have slipped through your fingers while you waited to feel ready? You sat, scrolling, thinking, I'll start when I feel more inspired. I just need a better mood. I'm too tired today. Tomorrow will be different. This is the trap so many of us fall into, confusing emotion with permission. But here's what the Stoics understood with piercing clarity, and what modern neuroscience now confirms. Motivation doesn't precede action. It follows it. Motivation is not the engine. It's the exhaust, the natural outcome of showing up, even when you don't want to. But the mind, oh, it loves to bargain. It whispers excuses like, let's start after lunch. Just 15 more minutes of rest. You're not in the right headspace today. Let's be clear. These aren't wise thoughts. They're ego-driven delays, crafted by the part of you that craves safety and comfort. And that part of you, it's always louder than the quiet voice calling you to grow. If you wait for the noise to disappear before taking action, you may wait your entire life. Because the truth is simple and sobering. Motivation is unreliable, but discipline is not. This is why the Stoic never checks their mood before choosing their direction. They check their principles. Epictetus didn't say, do the right thing when you feel good. He said, first, decide what you would be, then do what you must. That's not a feeling. That's a choice, a deliberate act of self-alignment. Picture a sculptor standing in front of a block of stone. Do you think they ask themselves, "Do I feel like creating today?" Of course not. They pick up the chisel. They begin. And somewhere in the motion, not before it, something shifts. Focus returns. Momentum builds. Clarity arrives. That's how discipline works. Action first, emotion follows. Yet, we've built a culture obsessed with the right time. We wait for the perfect energy, the ideal mindset, the stars to align. But life doesn't wait. Time doesn't ask if you're ready. And if you truly want to build something that matters, a resilient body, a focused mind, a grounded identity, you simply cannot afford to live at the mercy of your emotions. You must learn to move, especially when you don't feel like it, because that's when it counts the most. Let's bring it down to earth with a few simple examples. Don't want to work out? Put on your shoes. Walk outside for 5 minutes. That's all. Don't want to write? Open your notebook. Type one sentence. Avoiding that uncomfortable task. Set a timer for 10 minutes. Just start. The goal isn't perfection. It's initiation. Because once your body is in motion, the mind, reluctant as it may be, will begin to follow. And what once felt heavy starts to feel natural. What once seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable. The Stoics knew this. They understood that the most difficult part of any practice is the beginning. That first breath, that first step, that shift from passivity to presence. So when you find yourself stuck, paralyzed, or waiting for a sign, don't wait, move. The signal will come after you begin. So now you know. Real strength isn't about waiting to feel ready. It's about showing up anyway, even when every part of you wants to stay still. That's where your true power lives, not in some dramatic breakthrough, but in the small, invisible victories, the micro actions, the quiet steps taken when no one's cheering, the moments you choose to obey the mission, not your mood. So ask yourself honestly, what am I postponing just because I don't feel ready? And then take it a step further. What if I let go of the need to feel ready at all? Because once you develop the skill to act without waiting for motivation, you become rare. You become someone who's dangerous in the best way. Not because you're loud or flashy, but because you show up consistently, unapologetically. You don't wait to feel powerful. You act because you already are. Law 6. Live by conscious choice, not auto-reaction. Now pause for a moment and consider this. How much of your life is truly chosen? And how much is simply noise you inherited? It's a question that cuts deeper the longer you sit with it. Because here's the truth. Most people don't live. They react. They respond to expectations they've never paused to examine. They follow rules they never agreed to. They play roles they didn't audition for. They run habits that were never consciously installed. It's autopilot living, and it's everywhere. You wake up and reach for your phone before you breathe. You follow the same routine, engage in the same small talk, pursue the same goals, not because they align with your values, but because they're familiar, because they're safe. The Stoics warned us of this unconscious drift, and so did modern thinkers like Carl Jung. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." In other words, if you never stop to question the patterns that drive you, they will quietly become your prison. And the worst part, you won't even recognize it. you'll think, this is just who I am. But it's not. It's just who you've never questioned. That's why discipline, at its highest level, isn't just about pushing yourself. It's about waking up. It's about awareness. It's about choosing your life moment by moment, not reacting from old scripts, but acting with present clarity. That means slowing down, pausing before you say yes, taking a breath before you reach for the distraction, asking, is this really mine? Did I choose this? Or was it handed to me from someone else's story? Let's be real. A lot of what we call discipline is really just conditioning. Maybe you were raised in a household where achievement equaled love, so now you overwork and call it drive. Maybe you were told to stay small, so now you shrink in the face of growth and call it humility. Maybe you avoid hard conversations, not because you're at peace, but because you're afraid. These aren't conscious choices. They're unconscious responses, and they are powerful. They shape your decisions. They shape your identity. They shape your life. To live like a Stoic means to slow down and to ask the hard questions. Why do I chase this goal? Why do I eat this way? Why do I speak like this? Think like this? Is it serving me or just familiar? Because once you begin to live by conscious choice, everything changes. You stop reacting to life and start designing it. You no longer sleepwalk through routines. You build them with intention. You're no longer pulled by the current of other people's values. You begin to walk in the direction of your own. That's when your life stops being a reaction and starts becoming a masterpiece. So, when you begin designing your life consciously, moment by moment, you don't just create order, you unlock real freedom. That doesn't mean you toss out everything from your past. It means you examine it with clarity, not judgment. You keep what aligns. You release what no longer serves. You refine what needs growth. That is the true work of discipline. It's not just about doing the hard things. It's about doing the right hard things. The ones that actually pull you toward the person you're becoming. In practice, this might look simple. Maybe you start your mornings not by scrolling through noise, but by sitting in silence. Maybe you catch yourself right before you react in anger and choose curiosity instead. Maybe you finally let go of an old belief, one that kept you safe, but also small. These aren't flashy moves, but they are revolutionary, because for the first time, they're not unconscious, they're chosen. So pause and reflect. Where in your life are you still living from default, not design? What patterns do you follow because of fear, not truth? Ask yourself, what would it look like to act, not out of habit, not out of pressure, but out of deep, present honesty? Because discipline isn't just about doing, it's about deciding. And the more your life is shaped by conscious decisions, not inherited scripts, the more it stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like freedom. Law 7. What you do in private defines you in public. Character isn't forged under the spotlight. It's built in the shadows, in those unglamorous, uncelebrated hours when no one is watching, no one is praising, no one is keeping score. That's where the real work lives. It's in the decisions you make when you're exhausted, the promises you keep when there's no applause, the small habits you uphold when the world isn't looking. That's when your identity is being written, not in ink, but in action. The Stoics understood this deeply. Who you are in private, that's who you become in public, not the other way around. But we live in an age obsessed with performance. Social media rewards visibility, not integrity. We celebrate the highlight reel, Not the behind-the-scenes discipline that makes the highlight reel possible. But here's the truth. Public respect without private effort is fragile. It might look strong from the outside, but it can't hold. Under pressure, eventually, the mask cracks, and the world sees what you really built, or what you didn't. That's why Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, still wrote personal reflections every night. Not for the people, not for legacy, but for himself, to stay anchored, to remind himself of the man he wanted to remain, in a position that could have easily corrupted him. Because he knew the real battle isn't public, it's internal, and it's fought daily in the quiet moments no one sees. Let's bring it down to real life. Anyone can deliver a powerful speech, but do they listen with patience when interrupted at home? Anyone can post a brilliant quote, but do they embody it when emotions surge? Anyone can appear disciplined when a coach or mentor is watching. But what about when no one checks in? No deadlines, no validation, just you and the mirror. That's where your legacy is carved, not in your highlight moments, but in your repeated ones. The early morning when you rise, even though it's hard. The evening when you resist the easy escape. The hour you sit in discomfort, rather than numb it away. Because in the end, it's not the image you project. It's the life you're quietly building behind closed doors that tells the world who you really are. It's in those private, unseen moments that your true foundation is built, quietly, consistently, and with powerful consequence. These moments may seem invisible, but make no mistake, they are not meaningless. They are the roots beneath the surface, hidden but vital. And just like any tree, the deeper and stronger the roots, the higher you can grow without toppling. There's also something else that happens, something psychological, almost spiritual. When your private actions align with your intentions, a shift occurs. You gain something no amount of praise or applause can give you: self-trust. And self-trust? That's a superpower. When you know, without a doubt, that you will follow through, even when no one is watching, you begin to move through the world with quiet strength. You don't over-explain. You don't seek approval. You don't need to perform, because you've already proven your integrity, not to the world, but to yourself. But the opposite is also painfully true. If, behind closed doors, you repeatedly break your own promises, if you cut corners, tell yourself little lies, skip the difficult choices no one sees, that, too, leaves a mark. It lingers in your voice. It weighs on your posture. It creeps into your thoughts, not loudly, but steadily, because somewhere, deep down, a quiet voice starts to whisper, "I can't fully count on myself." That erosion of trust with yourself is one of the heaviest burdens to carry. And this is why Stoic discipline has never been about impressing the outside world. It's about impressing upon your soul the weight of your choices. It's about treating your alone time, those hours with no audience, as sacred, not as dead time, but as the training ground for the person you're becoming. So pause and ask yourself, who am I when no one is around? When the lights are off, the doors are closed, and there's no camera, no judgment, no praise. Because that version of you, the unfiltered, unpraised, uncelebrated you, that's the one building your future. And the more integrity that version holds, the less effort it takes to shine in public. You're not performing anymore. You're simply being. Law 8. Tame the dopamine. Rewire the reward. Now let's talk about something that quietly controls much of our discipline, or lack of it. If your mind often feels restless, scattered, or constantly seeking stimulation, it's not because you're broken. It's not a personal failure. It's biology hijacked. We're living in a world drenched in dopamine, and everything around us is engineered to steal our attention. Endless scrolls, pings, notifications, quick hits of likes, views, validation. Our brains have been trained to crave novelty, chase the next spike, and prioritize short-term pleasure over long-term purpose. And the most dangerous part, we don't even realize it, because it all feels normal. But here's what the Stoics would ask you. Does this habit serve your soul, or just your senses? Because what feels good right now isn't always what builds you. The journey toward true discipline begins with this realization. Not all rewards are created equal. Some are loud, fast, and empty. Others are quiet, slow, and lasting. And the work, your work, is to retrain your mind, to stop chasing shallow hits of dopamine and start seeking deep, earned satisfaction. Let's break it down. Dopamine itself isn't the enemy. It's simply the brain's way of learning what to repeat. The problem is that modern life floods your brain with artificial stimuli. Every ping, every clip, every scroll, each one teaches your brain pleasure can be instant. No effort required. So, when it's time to focus, to read, to study, to work out, to sit still, your brain resists. It's addicted to the easy high. So if your brain resists stillness, if it craves distraction, don't blame yourself. This isn't weakness, it's just conditioning. But conditioning can be undone. When you try to be still, when you close the laptop, silence the phone, and try to just be, your brain protests. It whispers, "This is boring, give me something faster." That reaction, that's not a personal flaw. It's programming, conditioning built from thousands of micro-interactions, with a world designed to hook your attention. So how do we fight back? The Stoics wouldn't say eliminate pleasure. They weren't monks of misery. They would say, elevate it. Replace the shallow rewards with deeper ones. Choose pleasure that strengthens instead of numbs. Instead of binging through endless content, find joy in completion. Finish that book. Complete the workout. Cross off the to-do. Not for the applause, but for the momentum it builds. Instead of the thrill of a quick distraction. Cultivate the slow satisfaction of mastery, of doing something again and again, until you no longer have to force yourself, because it's become who you are. And instead of chasing the temporary high of being liked, learn to appreciate the quiet, powerful pride of keeping your word, especially when no one is watching. But this shift, it doesn't happen on accident. It requires intention. It means designing your environment so that the path of least resistance leads you toward your values, not away from them. Put your phone away during deep work. Keep it out of reach during meals. Replace aimless scrolling with intentional learning. End your day not with a screen, but with journaling, even just one sentence. These acts may seem small, but they are not. They are daily rebellions against a world engineered to keep you distracted. And here's the beautiful part. Over time, your brain begins to rewire. You start to crave the real wins, not fleeting likes, but real progress, not surface-level validation, but deep internal growth. You begin to link pleasure not with escape, but with effort, with completion, with presence. And when that shift takes hold, discipline starts to feel different. It no longer feels like a grind. It feels rewarding, not because it became easy, but because it finally started to make sense. This is what it truly means to tame the dopamine, not to deny yourself joy, but to upgrade it, to stop settling for crumbs when you could be crafting a feast, because the most lasting satisfaction is never instant. It is earned quietly, consistently, and through conscious repetition. So ask yourself, where am I still chasing shallow rewards? Where is my mind addicted to cheap satisfaction? And more importantly, what would happen if I started replacing those impulses with silence, with structure, with substance? Because your brain, it isn't broken, it's just been trained. And if it was trained to crave distraction, it can also be trained to crave discipline. Law 9. Structure is a form of mercy. Let's now reframe something we've long misunderstood. We often think of structure as harsh, rigid, restrictive, a prison of color-coded calendars and suffocating routines. But that's only true when structure is imposed without soul. Real structure, intentional structure, isn't punishment. It's mercy. It's the act of protecting your peace, your purpose, and your energy from the chaos that always tries to creep in. Not because you're afraid of chaos, but because you respect yourself enough not to drown in it. Without structure, you don't get freedom. You get fragmentation. You get burnout. You get a day filled with endless activity, but empty of presence. Seneca warned us centuries ago. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And that waste, it doesn't come from laziness. It comes from the absence of design. From waking up and letting the day pull you in every direction. From answering every message. Following every impulse. Saying yes to every request. From trying to do everything at once and ending up doing nothing with clarity. You go to bed exhausted, but unfulfilled. So if structure once felt like a cage, maybe it's time to see it for what it truly is, a key to peace, clarity, and purpose. The Stoics were never opposed to joy. They didn't reject pleasure, nor did they view freedom as something to be feared. What they stood for, fiercely and consistently, was intention. Because they understood something that many of us forget. A day without structure is a day surrendered to chaos. And the cost of that chaos, it's not just a few wasted hours. It's your peace, your progress, your personal power. Let's bring this into real life. Picture this. You start your morning with no plan. You reach for your phone before you've even left the bed. You check notifications, respond to messages. You get pulled into whatever feels urgent, not what truly matters. The hours slip by. You bounce from one distraction to the next, constantly reacting. Before you know it, you're scrambling, trying to catch up with a day that never felt like yours to begin with. Sound familiar? That's not freedom. That's just low-level suffering disguised as flexibility. Now compare that to something far more powerful, a structured morning, even a simple one. You wake up without your phone. You sit in stillness. Maybe you stretch. Maybe you write in a journal. But more importantly, you know your first task, and you start it without hesitation. Why? Because it was already decided. By noon, you've already tackled what matters most. Not in a rush, not in panic, but in peace. That's not rigidity. That's alignment. That's mercy for your mind, your energy, your attention. Here's the truth. Most people believe structure means doing more. But real structure, it's about doing less, better. It's about cutting through the noise so the signal of your purpose can finally come through. It's not about building a prison of tasks. It's about building a container, a safe space for your highest self to show up consistently, not just once in a while, but daily. And this goes beyond productivity. When your day lacks rhythm, your nervous system suffers. When you jump from task to task without pause, your brain frays. When you live in constant reactivity, your baseline becomes anxiety, and you forget what calm even feels like. But when you bring in structure, when you set rituals, start times, end times, sacred boundaries, something beautiful happens. Your body begins to relax, your mind begins to clear, and suddenly there's space, not just for work, but for rest, joy, creativity, reflection. Even artists, writers, creators, those who thrive on imagination, benefit from structure, not rigid timelines, but sacred containers, time blocks, for flow, environments that encourage focus, boundaries that protect their energy. Because structure doesn't kill creativity, it channels it. It gives shape to the chaos and direction to your vision. So ask yourself, where am I still resisting structure? Where am I afraid that it might trap me? And what if, just what if, structure isn't a cage at all, but a key to clarity, to discipline, to peace, a way to finally stop spinning in circles and start moving forward with intention. Because life is loud. Life will pull at you from every direction, and without a rhythm to return to, a structure to hold you, you will lose yourself. Give your mind the mercy it's been begging for, not with more rules, but with intelligent rhythm, not with pressure, but with design. Because the more structure you build around what matters, the more freedom you'll feel within it. Law 10. Act like the person you are becoming. And now, here's the final truth. Every single decision you make, every small choice, every yes and every no, is not just a step toward your future. It's a vote, a declaration, a signal, not only to the world, but to yourself, of who you believe you are becoming. The Stoics never cared about action alone. They cared about identity. They didn't just want you to do the right thing. They wanted you to become the kind of person who naturally does the right thing. So if every decision casts a vote for the person you're becoming, then it's time to act not from who you've been, but from who you are ready to be. That's what true transformation looks like. That's when discipline shifts from something you do to something you are. Not just behavior, but embodiment. So ask yourself, not someday, not in 5 years, but right now, who are you trying to become? Not in theory, but in the small, often invisible moments that make up your day. Are your current actions reflecting that version of you, or are they secretly working against it? If you want to become more grounded, more focused, more powerful, then you need to start acting like that version of yourself. Not when it's convenient, not when you feel like it, but now. This is what identity-based discipline looks like. It's about showing up as if the future version of you, the one you admire, already lives inside you, waiting to take the lead. Imagine this. You want to be a writer. The old version of you waits for inspiration. But the disciplined you write every morning, even when the words come out messy, flat, or wrong. You want to be healthy. The old you finds excuses. The new you shows up to the gym like it's a non-negotiable meeting with your future self. The old you reacts impulsively when things get tense. The new you pauses, breathes, and speaks with intention. Every moment is a vote. You're either reinforcing your old identity or rehearsing your new one. But here's the important distinction. This isn't about pretending. It's about practicing. You don't fake confidence. You practice it. You don't wait for emotional strength. You train it. Over time, the practice becomes natural. What once felt like a stretch becomes who you are. That's how you change. Not through some huge leap, but through small, steady steps, repeated with intention. Marcus Aurelius didn't just write about virtue. He lived it. His journal wasn't for show. It was a mirror, a daily check-in, not to measure how far he'd come, but to ask, am I becoming who I say I want to be? Because identity isn't fixed. It's sculpted, action by action, decision by decision, day by day. This process may feel subtle, but make no mistake, it's powerful. You show up before the results appear, because it's not just the outcome you're building yourself. You don't meditate once and become calm. You don't run once and become strong. You don't study once and become wise. But do those things long enough, often enough, and something starts to shift. You stop trying. You stop faking it. And you begin being it. You stop acting like the version of you that doubts, and begin becoming the version of you that you once admired from a distance. And let's not sugarcoat it. Becoming someone new is uncomfortable. It requires shedding old stories, letting go of old excuses, and rewriting emotional patterns you've relied on for years. That's why most people resist it. Because deep down, they're forced to confront a powerful, vulnerable question. Am I willing to let go of who I've been, to become who I know I could be? That's the invitation. Stop waiting for the right mood. Stop waiting for motivation. Start acting as if. Act like the person who wakes up early. Act like the person who follows through. Act like the person who leads with integrity, speaks with clarity, and protects their time like it matters. Because it does. And when you do this, again and again, something incredible happens. Your mind adjusts. Your emotions align. Your identity begins to lock in. Because discipline isn't a mood. It's a message. One you send to your future self. One deliberate action at a time. So if discipline begins with action, then how we spend each small moment becomes not just a habit, but the blueprint of our becoming. Law 11. Every minute is a brick in the temple of your life after practicing identity-based discipline. Now comes the deeper truth. Every minute you live is a silent brick, laid in the architecture of your life. You get 1,440 of them each day, quiet, invisible currency. And the real question is never whether you have time. The real question is, what are you building with it? Each minute you live is a silent brick, a single unit of time, invisible, fleeting, and irreplaceable, placed into the temple of your life. You get 1,440 of them each day. The question isn't whether you have time. The real question is, what are you building with it? Because whether you realize it or not, time is always being spent. Every hour is shaping something. Every action, no matter how small, becomes a wall, a room, a roof, until one day, you look around and realize you're living inside the temple you've built, for better or for worse. The Stoics were obsessed with time, not because they feared death, but because they respected the value of each moment. Seneca once said, people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Why? Because everything else in life can be replaced, but time? Never. Every minute wasted to distraction, to avoidance, to hesitation is a brick misplaced. And a temple built with broken, careless bricks, eventually, it crumbles under its own weight. Think of someone you deeply admire, not because of their wealth or fame, but because of their inner strength, their calm presence, their quiet consistency, their unshakable character. That kind of person wasn't built in a single breakthrough moment. They were shaped, minute by minute, in how they chose to respond to discomfort, in how they structured their time, in how they gave attention to their work, their thoughts, their relationships. These weren't just daily choices. They were acts of architecture. And so are yours. Scroll for 30 minutes a day, and it might feel harmless, but do that every day. And by the end of the year, you've lost 11 full days of your life. Not resting, not connecting, just escaping. Now flip that. Write for 30 minutes a day. You've got a book by year's end. Read for 15. You've consumed volumes of wisdom. Reflect for 10. You start recognizing your patterns, your growth, your blind spots. It's not how much time you have. It's how intentionally you use it. That's why the Stoics practiced daily reflection. Why they journaled. Why they planned. Why they prioritized. Because they knew, if you're not building with your minutes, you're eroding. There is no neutral. Every moment is moving you closer to your purpose or further from it. But let's be clear. This doesn't mean every second of your life needs to be productive. That's not discipline. That's delusion. Rest matters. Joy matters. Presence matters. But when you rest, really rest, when you play, truly play, don't dilute those moments with guilt or numb them with mindless scrolling. Because what burns you out isn't doing too much. It's being fragmented while doing it. So what does it look like? In real life, you wake up, and instead of diving into notifications, you take 10 minutes to breathe, reflect, and set your intention. That's a brick. You sit down to work, and instead of juggling 5 tasks, you focus deeply on just one. That's another brick. You say no to the distraction, yes to the hard workout, no to the impulse, yes to the long postponed project. Brick by brick by brick, until the day ends. And you don't feel drained. You feel anchored. Because today, you didn't just pass the time. You built with it. So when you end the day knowing you've placed your bricks with purpose, that's not just survival. That's self-construction. Because you didn't just make it through the day. You built something with it. That's what it means to live with intention. Not reacting, not drifting, not breaking your life into scattered pieces, but moving forward in quiet alignment, choice by choice. So ask yourself, honestly, what am I building with my minutes today? Is this hour, right now, bringing me closer to the person I respect, or pulling me away? Because the temple of your life isn't built someday. It's built now, one block of time at a time. Law 12. If you don't measure it, it's not growth. You say you want to grow, but how do you know if you are? If you're not measuring it, you're guessing. And if you're guessing, you're probably drifting. That's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't avoid growth because they're lazy. They avoid it because they don't stop long enough to reflect. Because movement without awareness isn't progress. It's just noise. Discipline without measurement, that's just effort with no compass. The Stoics understood this centuries ago, long before modern psychology confirmed it. Without self-examination, there is no evolution. You can't improve what you don't track. You can't master what you don't measure. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. But let's be clear, habits don't form by accident. They form through attention. And attention comes from measurement, not to punish yourself, but to clarify your path. This isn't about turning your life into a spreadsheet. It's about making your growth real, tangible, visible. Because what gets tracked gets respected. Think of it like this. Would you build a house without checking your measurements? Would you sail across the ocean without checking your direction? And yet, most people try to build their lives, their focus, their values, without ever checking their progress. Then they wonder why they feel stuck, lost, disconnected from what they claim to want. It's not because they're failing. It's because they're blind. They're working hard, but in the wrong direction. Let's bring this down to earth. Do you know how often you break promises to yourself? How much time you lose to distractions each week? How often you follow through, or how often you fall off? Without measurement, those answers stay vague, and vagueness is the enemy of real progress. But once you start tracking, even just a little, everything begins to shift. You become more honest, more self-aware, more precise. You start noticing patterns, the triggers that throw you off, the excuses you repeat, the times of day where you tend to break down or rise up. And that insight gives you power. It gives you choice. The Stoics practiced this through nightly reflection. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, asked himself, "What did I do well today? Where did I fall short? What can I do better tomorrow?" That's not journaling. That's measurement. That's accountability. And over time, it becomes your compass. You stop making the same mistake over and over. And you start adjusting, consciously, deliberately. That's how excellence is really born. Not from one big breakthrough, but from daily calibration. Maybe that means a habit tracker. Maybe it means journaling for 5 minutes before bed. Maybe it's a weekly self-review every Sunday. It doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be consistent. Because once you start measuring your growth, your choices stop being blurry and start becoming powerful. When you measure your effort, even in silence, something shifts. You begin to respect it. You realize that discipline isn't just a force you apply. It's a foundation you build, brick by brick, pattern by pattern, choice by conscious choice. So pause and ask yourself, where am I still guessing in my growth? What might shift if I started tracking, not to be perfect, but to be present? Because without measurement, discipline becomes fog. But with it, you gain clarity. You find your direction. You reclaim your power. And that's how you stop spinning in circles and start stepping into the version of you that you were meant to become. Discipline isn't a cage. It's a choice. It's not cold or harsh or lifeless. It's not some extreme grind meant to punish you into becoming someone else. No. True discipline, the kind the Stoics practiced and lived, is about building a life that mirrors your deepest values. It's aligning your minutes with your mission. It's taking the chaos life throws at you and turning it into something ordered, stable, meaningful, quietly, relentlessly, daily. Because without order, the mind fractures. Without structure, your energy leaks. Without reflection, your potential quietly decays. But with discipline, real, intentional, self-respecting discipline, everything begins to change. You walk taller. You think sharper. You act not out of pressure, but out of purpose. And little by little, you become someone you can trust. Not perfect, not flawless, but solid, consistent, rooted. You don't need to change your whole life overnight. You just need to return, again and again, to what matters most. Lay the brick, do the work, hold the standard, and when you fall, rise, but this time with clarity. Because every act of discipline sends a message. I am becoming the person I was born to be. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop performing for the world and start aligning with yourself. 12 laws. 1 mission, not to control life, but to master how you move through it. And if this message stirred something deep within you, share it with someone who's ready to take back their mind. Like this video if it resonated. Subscribe to Stoic Capsule for more truths the world needs but rarely hears. Because if you're walking this path quietly, no applause, no shortcuts, just pure intention, you're not alone. Keep building, keep sharpening, keep showing up like it matters, because it does.